All right. Well, this is episode number 7 in our The Uncertainty of show. And I'd like to do a quick recap of what we've covered so far, bring everybody up to speed and get us off at that launching point for today's discussion. So we began by thinking about the real world in terms of three basic systems: order, complex, and chaos. And in the order system, with its boundaries and constraints, we simply follow known, robust recipes to get certainty, stability, and predictability. When you're in chaos, the calm, steady state of the order system is unexpectedly hit by a failure. Failure could be a physical, uh, facility or equipment disaster, tool or vehicle breakdown, human accident, like a near miss, minor injury, or worse, a fatality. Failure can also be social, emotional, mental collapse or violence in the workplace. Time is of the essence to quickly prevent further damage and stabilize the situation. So we choose to quickly recover to the order system, but we could also choose to head to the complex system and become a chef. The complex system feels a lot like chaos, but no major failure or breakdown has occurred. We feel uncertain, unpredictable, ambiguous because we don't understand what's happening right now, and it might be a lack of information or things we knew nothing about. So we learn to be resilient chefs. When ingredients are missing, we listen to other voices and seek their contributions. When faced with never seen before problems, we apply heuristic honed from our own wealth of past successes and failures. And we experiment with different ideas to develop new recipes to use in the order system. And living in the real world means we need both robustness and resilience.
Great. Great, Scott. That's quite a recap. And I think over these past 6 shows, we've actually created quite a stew that we've been cooking.
Yeah.
Our guest today is Andrew MacKenzie, but before I formally introduce Andrew, I just want to add maybe like you say, a few more spices, if I can use that word. So let me just show you this slide of my background. And this is a quickie. Won't spend a lot of time on it, but all I want to say about this one is that there has been an evolution. This little diagram shows the evolution of business and how we've gone through different phases. And those yellow bubbles, those are the points where we have a dominant sort of paradigm, which works for a while, but then it doesn't solve the problems of today. So emerging ones appear to say, I think we can do better. And then that's how we shift to the next wave. And that happens. And this will probably carry on for forever. We're just at that point now where, okay, we're at that stage where the engineering paradigm is very, very strong. We've been doing systems thinking. We're now suggesting there is another way that we've been working on, and it's one that introduces complexity science and also looks at perhaps other disciplines coming in, such as neurocognitive science and anthropology. That allowed me then to look at some previous work done by Eric Hallnagel. And if you read Sidney Decker's book on safety science, we all reflect the same things, plus or minus, we're close. I'm here to really talk about now, because I'm excited about what we call the age of cognitive complexity. So as Scott said, there are three systems. The complex system by far is the most fascinating. But if you compare this to classical sciences like math and physics, chemistry, complexity science is still in its embryonic stage of development. So a lot of things that we're talking about today, we think they're right. And as we get more evidence, hopefully they'll become truths, but maybe not. We're just not sure. So complexity science has given us meaning to concepts like feedback loops and emergence. We hear about a meme or a trope on social media going viral now, or how we learned during the COVID-19 pandemic how variants spread exponentially and adapt for which a new mutant emerges out of nowhere. So that's where complexity science has been a very helpful aid to describe what's happening in the real world. Now, another intriguing phenomenon is patterns. Patterns are these hidden order in a complex system. So when you look at nature, just think of birds flocking, fish swarming. Their direction is unpredictable, yet they seem to be following some sort of order. Self-organization is another example of pattern behavior. It's how crowds manage to navigate through busy streets, or if you're a skier, how we don't have, as people are just flying down the hill, more accidents. They seem to self-organize, probably self-survival as well, to kind of avoid each other, maybe come close, but they don't really have accidents. Or the one that we've been really noticing, of course, with all of our extreme weather, natural disasters, how neighbors band together to provide mutual aid, distribute resources, and coordinate safety efforts. So a lot of the things that we're seeing for extreme weather, and boy, are we ever getting that in BC and Alberta, right, Scott, with Jasper, kind of like burning up. We find that it's not always about the top down, it's about the local. How do they get together in order to survive and make sense of a situation? Now, on these maps that we see, I showed, you notice that the complex system is much larger than order or chaos. Now, why is this? Because with every new relationship and connection you make, your personal complex system exponentially grows. This isn't just human interactions, but includes objects, events, any idea that you encounter. Once that you have a relationship with that, your complexity kind of grows with that. Now, compare that to how fast your order system is growing, or perhaps maybe shrinking with age. Quite often your order system grows because you get trained in certain things. Well, when's the last time I took a training course? It's been some time ago. So I have this feeling my order system relatively is shrinking, but my complex system is always growing here. So let me just have a quick look to show you what are you packing inside your brain. And let me talk about that in terms of knowledge, and there are different knowledge types. So 3 types of knowledge are in the order system, which is what is in your head, what we call our known knowns. These are things that are explicitly documented and we all do very well. We also have what we call known unknowns. This is what we call risk. We know it exists, but we just don't know its frequency and its severity. So we assign some sort of probability to it here. Now, quite often a known known is something we know about, but we don't do much about it. And if they're really big, we call these black elephants. You may have heard that term here. It's that thing where everybody knows about it, nobody wants to talk about it until it happens. And when it happens, of course, we have that plunge into chaos and some sort of disaster, catastrophe takes place. There's a third type in the order system, and we call that unknown knowns. Sounds a bit weird, but this is basically tacit knowledge. It's in my head. I just haven't shared it with anybody. And perhaps I will volunteer that one of these days when the time comes. Scott talked a bit about heuristics. That's these heuristics I have in my head, which worked in the past. I haven't shared with anybody, but I will use it again. There's a lot of tacit knowledge that's still there that hasn't been captured to turn into known knowns and explicit knowledge. So we got to think about that as well. Now, again, the fascinating system is the complex system. This is the realm of unknown unknowns. What you don't know is what you don't know. It's also a reminder of the limits of our knowledge and awareness. In the chaotic system, we have a couple here that are really interesting. Well, unknowables. Beyond our current capacity to understand or discover the so-called mysteries of the universe. We can't even do scenario planning for these things because we just don't know about them at this point. And now you've got unimaginables beyond the realm of what we can conceive or comprehend. I know when we do earthquake analysis and preparation and design of buildings, we always looked at the Richter scale and we designed towards, maybe an earthquake of 8.2 or 9 or whatever. Well, do you think nature pays attention to what we humans think about? Well, maybe for all we know, nature will just say, okay, let's have an earthquake of 12. Wholly unimaginable. And we cannot design for a 12 or 14 because that would go beyond the realms of affordability. So we kind of make best what we do. But we've seen natural wildfires like we talked about in Jasper. What we also have now, which is becoming more and more of a bigger problem, is infrastructure breakdown. This is our things that we design as humans, sewer lines, electrical systems. Those things over time, we know are going to break down, and they are. And quite often they'll break down and create a sinkhole or whatever, it's that sort of stuff. But what else are we seeing? We're seeing mass shootings, cyber attacks. These things are unprecedented. Quite often we refer to these things as black swans. If you heard that term, this is where it fits. Now, that's really what we talk about in terms of knowledge. What we also talk about too in the age of cognitive complexity is humans as storytellers. So what we want to do in our new way of thinking about safety is blend in what we know from the field of ethnography under the social science of anthropology. So we know that patterns are formed by the stories people tell every day at work or at home. And we also know too that these deeply ingrained patterns become habits, rituals, sacred cows, taboos. Think about your own home. How do you pass on your family customs and traditions? You don't do them as explicit documents. No, you pass them down as stories from generation to generation. And guess what? Cognitive neuroscience, they discovered that the human brain wasn't designed to act like a computer to store and retrieve information. No, it was designed to recognize patterns. So what does this all mean? It means that we can naturally use the power of human brain to recognize the patterns formed by stories. And that's really what we're trying to do and what we're going to be showing today. We're going to look at this theme of humans as storytellers. Now, the topic today is wayfinding. This is something I just plucked from good old Wikipedia. And today's topic, the uncertainty of wayfinding through the unknowns of safety. Wikipedia talks about wayfinding in 4 different things: orientation, route decision, route monitoring, and destination recognition. So in today's context, it's wayfinding in a future full of unknown unknowns, unknowables, and unimaginables. So what we need is to find a way of navigating what is inherently uncertain to not only minimize the risk, but also to take opportunities as they arise. I've used this diagram. If you're driving a vehicle, we can look at the past, rear mirror. We can't do much about the past, but we can look at it. We can look at the present, which is in your windshield, looking straight ahead. That's the present. And basically, that's the only thing you can control. But we always have this mind towards the future. And all of that we know is that the future is foggy. And that's what this little diagram shows. We want to be on the lookout. As you can see, if you look carefully, those black swans and black elephants, they're out there. Don't know when they're going to happen, how big they're going to be, but they're out there. And by the way, black swans, black elephants, other authors have coined other words like gray rhinos, purple dragons, white slugs. So there's quite a menagerie of risk management creatures that are out there. So now, with that sort of introduction, I'd like to welcome Andrew to our show. So Andrew is a fellow Canadian who's moved his base from the BC West Coast over to Nova Scotia on the East Coast, and now works at RPS Industrial Group. So Andrew, you've been on other Safeopedia webinars and published articles, am I correct?
I am. That's true.
Great, great. So I've asked Andrew to join us so that we can hear and learn from his vast experiences as a mentor, as an auditor, a change manager, a leadership coach, and of course, a storyteller. So stories are powerful because they represent an organization's culture. So if I want to use an old culture definition, what's it like working here? Well, one way to ask that question is, what are the stories people are telling? So Andrew, why don't you start off? Because I think you told me a really fascinating story about culture. Why don't you share that with everybody?
Okay, so thanks guys for inviting me today. So I used to work for a global firm. I won't drop a name here, but I had operations from Canada to Argentina and all points in between. And what I discovered is when I first started my role, I wanted to meet the people I'm going to be working with. By and large, I'm going to be working remotely from these people, but I want to meet them. So one of my trips was to go down to Brazil. This plant in Brazil had, like, at the time, about 6 or 7 years without a recordable injury. And all my managers that I was starting up with were all saying, "Oh, you got to go down there. These guys, it's going to be a life-changing experience." And I thought, okay, what's this going to be like? So at the time I was starting my role, I was a regional manager. So what I was doing is I was starting out by doing a gap analysis of every site I went to. The premise of doing the gap analysis was I got a chance to meet the individuals, get a chance to look at their operations, look at where their safety program stood today and where we wanted it to be future tense. And it was a chance for them to get to know me and me to get to know them. So going to Brazil was a real highlight for me. So I got in there and I had to use the two safety people I was working with. Unfortunately, didn't speak a stitch of English, and I didn't speak a stitch of Portuguese, so we had to use a third person who was also well versed. And we started looking at their program, and the more we looked at their program, I was really struggling to find anything wrong. I figured nobody can be this perfect, but we went out there, we walked through the facility. I was struggling to find something wrong, and finally, I saw a pallet sitting at the end of an assembly line, and I said to the young woman, I said, "That's a tripping hazard." And she says, "No, it's not." And I said, "Well, what do you mean? People are not going to ever pass that way?" She says, "Absolutely not. That's not how we do things here." She said, looked at her watch, she says, "They're going on break in 2 minutes here. Just watch and see what happens." So the alarm goes off. 2 minutes later, everybody files single file out of that assembly line, and they follow each other to the break room. I was floored. And what I discovered there, and this is really circling back to the notion of culture, is that because I was working in so many different regions, every region had its own culture to safety. And in particular, this case, these guys, it was really, these are the rules, and you're not going to deviate from them. It's just really that simple. And if you stopped and looked at the culture of the country, it was very much the same thing. It was yes, there's some deviations from it, but by and large, everybody follows the rules that have been set out. So, and this circles to the next question, the next part, but I won't jump too far ahead here, Gary. But but these guys, like say, they had a huge record for their safety record, and they're proud of it, and for good reason.
Yeah, I think what the story you kind of shared with me, it tells me like, okay, what we're talking about here is order system. And in the order system, you have best practices, you've got habits, and you've got essentially golden rules that everybody follows without question, and they work, and everybody remains safe when they're.
But
But
just
then
as an
you told me a
aside,
story
so
about there was an accident, right? So when
right.
an accident occurs or an incident, you plunge into the chaos domain. So then you investigated that. So what happened?
Well, and again, this site was very. When I first started, I was told that the manager in this facility is one of these individuals. When he speaks up, the whole room goes silent because they want to hear what he's got to say. He doesn't speak that often, but he was very, commanding in what he had to say. So they had an incident, and I'll give you a sense of what they were doing. Give you a picture of the picture first.
Yeah.
These guys were making electronic parts, so they were making electronic ballasts, and in a ballast they would put the electronics in a tin box. They fill it with molten asphalt, and then as it went through a cooling tunnel, it would cool down, and then they could pick it up and take it off the line. So there was an incident that happened, and I'll paint the story here, is that there's a clog in the asphalt injector. So they're running empty boxes through to clear the clog. And in that process, an intern, so a new employee, got a little bit impatient and reached inside the tunnel to drag the part through a little faster. And in doing so, put his finger into molten asphalt. So they immediately took that individual to the med bay and had him treated, and everything's all good, put him back to work. It was a first aid only. So the next day, though, they rolled their clock back to 0. They were coming up on 8 years without a recordable, and they rolled their clock back to 0. So I was like mortified by this. I thought, oh my God, what's going on here? So I called up the manager and I asked him, and his story just resonates to this day with me because I share this story a lot. He said the first words out of his mouth, "I failed that worker. This will never happen again." Wow. Period. And I thought, holy crap. I mean, this was just the culture they had there. So I shared that with all the other senior managers. This is the way we should be thinking. This is the attitude we should be taking. I mean, it's not about having a record of anything else. This is a human life, and you need to make that paramount. That needs to be your priority here, not having that KPI of 0 accidents. We want to strive for that, but that is not the most important thing. The most important thing is what we do, what we learn, what we apply.
Wow. 2 powerful stories, and I'm sure everybody that's on listening to us or viewing, you've got your own signature stories, good or bad, that you'd want to share. And this is why we talked about humans as storytellers. But it's also like, how can we make use of that to wayfind our way through? So thanks for that, Andrew. Let's carry on and let's look at what we can do. I'm going to go back to this wayfinding slide because I'm going to start with that first stage, orientation. So right here. And we'd like to talk about right here because as you saw in my driving sort of diagram, the only thing that we can change is the present. Right? Can't do anything about the past, can't do much about the future, but we can only work on the present. So right now. So what's a simple way to assess right here, right now? And what we're suggesting is, well, just listen to the employees voice their true life experiences. And you kind of got that when you went down there and you watched that employee say, oh, just watch how they filed into the lunchroom, right? And then there it is in the present, a real life experience, as you say, that really resonates with you. So what we want to do now is then, can we map these in such a fashion to afford us a current situation assessment based on facts? Because that's what you're going for. That's what you discovered in the Brazil plant, current situation, which tells you a lot about their culture. But as we say in the world of complexity, culture in one big organization is fractal. Fractal means is that it ain't the same over there or over here, it's over there. Every place has got its own culture. So this one size fit all idea really, really doesn't work. We've got to kind of like, as we say, go granularly down to where it makes sense. And the lowest level of granularity that has coherence, as we call it, is stories. So that's what we want to do, is look at how can we make use of those stories and collect it. So in that kind of brief introduction, we've talked about the why and the what. So today, we really want to focus on now is the how. How do we do that and collect those stories, analyze those stories so they kind of make sense, so we know what to do to improve our safety culture here. Now, there are various methods and tools available. The diagram behind me happens to be just one of them. The software that I will be talking about is called SenseMaker, and it's offered by the Kinevin company. Now, as a full disclosure, I am not a Kinevin employee. I'm just one of over, I think we're up to 8,000 practitioners around the world. And I know I've been using SenseMaker for over a decade, and it's been around for the past 20 years. It's a very simple process, and hopefully you can see that diagram. It starts with a design of a collector. And some of you that saw my LinkedIn post about go ahead and kick the tires, enter the collector, and you can see how it was designed and try it out here. That's the first stage, is design a collector. Now we go out, and what you've done is we start to collect the narratives using this collector. That then leads us into the analysis and sense-making phase of the data. You've probably heard of the big term, or the term big data. And I think most companies have a sort of a big data, whether it's a Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, whatever. But that's a big major ERP or IT systems that you have. That's great because those sort of systems gives you the who, the when, the where, and the what, and allows you to look at your company through those lenses. Now, ethnographer Tricia Wang calls stories thick data because the answer is the emotional why question. And that's what big data doesn't have. So what we're now seeing is that we need both big data or thick data together. So it's not either or, but it's a both and that's what we want to do. This is the first step. So a second step, sorry, which is really now collecting. Now, on that stage there, you'll see there's a little link down below. Scott, I don't know if we can put that link into the chat panel.
Yes, it's in there.
Good. Okay. Now, you don't have to put one in there. That's either for future kicking the tires. You want to do that because I'm going to go into screen share, then we're going to see this. But this is where you enter the data. I've done this with different companies. One company I worked with, I went down there, we did some story collecting, and they all had, all the workers, the maintenance people, they fortunately had iPads. So we were able to install a little icon on their home screen with this link. So anytime they wanted to share a story, they just click the button and boom, quickly enter a story. And in the instructions, there's an instruction button there. You can see that when we talk about stories, we're just talking about 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes max of a story. So these are kind of like little snippets which are happening in your life. We can also talk about this as a dear diary sort of entry in your journal as well, something quick. So we're not talking 2-hour Hollywood stories, just very quick things of what did you just experience? So the stories that we're talking about here aren't fictitious stories, what the future looks like, but things that just happened to you right now or in the immediate past. That's what we're most interested in. So if you go there, you can scroll down, you can click buttons, you can move around these hexagon markers and add something in the text boxes. Then at the end, we suggested just put in either your last name or a fictitious name so that you can later recognize that this is your entry. And yeah, it did make it into the database. Now, the whole idea of moving around these hexagons and markers is just a different way of collecting your data. You, as a storyteller, you have the authentic voice. What we don't want to do, and we can avoid it, is where somebody shares a story and then I say, oh, I know what that person is talking about. Well, hell's bells, there's no way that I know what that person is talking about. The only person who knows what they're talking about is the storyteller themselves. So we give you the opportunity to emotionally move those markers around and tell us, what about that? So about that story. So you add your emotional content to that as well. Okay. Now, if you have any questions about that, you can put them in the chat panel. If we got some time at the end, I can talk a bit about design, collecting, that sort of stuff. Okay. What we want to do now, though, is move into the more interesting part, which is the dashboard. So this system, which we're talking about, SenseMaker system, it's essentially 24/7, 365, real time. Again, Scott, if you can put that little link into the chat panel, this is what I'm talking about. This is what you will bring up. Okay. This is what we call a dashboard. and makes sense, right? Because if you're in a car, you're in the present, you're looking, and you're also looking at your dashboard. You're not looking at a scorecard, you're looking at your dashboard, because the dashboard tells you what's happening in the present. All right. Okay, so this is now where we get interactive, and I want to do a bit of a session where I would simulate facilitating a sense-making meeting. And let's say Andrew as the EH&S director for this company. So we'll assume that all the stories in the demo are for my organization. Because this is a demo, by the way, don't feel bad about putting in different stories that don't make sense or whatever. I see that some people have just put in, I'm testing this thing, which is fine. That's all we want to do, is just give you a feeling for how the software sort of works here. So at this point, I'm now going to share my screen. You can watch along at your own pace on the link that Scott just put on your dashboard, or else you can just follow along with me. So Scott, I'm going to, fingers crossed, share my screen. And let's just share this one. Okay, is that working for everybody?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, so let me do one other thing. Let's just, I'll just move my face over here. Okay, so this is something which I would sit down with Scott. Now, as a complexity facilitator, it's different than traditional facilitator. As a traditional facilitator or consultant, I would say, oh, look what I saw. Oh, look what I found. Andrew, have a look at this. I don't do that because the data is not mine. And it's much better if the person that owns the data, in this case, Andrew, looks at the data. So I'm there to facilitate him through the data. There are some small things that I will do. For example, like if you click on custom range up here, you can see that, okay, I'm going to look at today. Oh, look at that. Okay, so some people, 5 people I see, they've taken up my offer to throw a story in there, which is great. And if I were to look at the last 7 days, you can see that. Okay, oh, there's 9. So some people put on a few stories beforehand. And as you can see, you can go to all data. So again, assuming that all this is one company, you can do that and just look at all the data. Okay? You can also, because of that, you can actually do this, where you can do custom ranges. So where would custom ranges come in port? Well, Andrew may say, what was it like? What were these patterns, these maps look like 6 months ago compared to today? And Andrew can do that because he can put in a custom range. Well, let's look at see what the stories were like in January. Now let's look at the stories to see what they're like in September. And then now you've got to see, or look at the trends that maybe are developing. We are, or maybe we're not, making the progress that we want to make. Now, we call this at a glance. I'm just going to just take off that, leave it over there. We call this at a glance because each dot is a story. At a glance also means that we want to look at the patterns. There's a real desire to go down and look and read the actual stories because we have this tendency as humans to say, well, who said that? Right? And we don't want to do that. Particularly with decision makers, we like to keep them higher up, say, oh, no, just look at the patterns that are formed. You can see on these heat maps, as we call them, for these triads, for these you can see for this company at a glance, what is your company sort of like emphasizing? And if I look at the middle one, for example, work in this specific moment was impacted by, Andrew, what do you think impacts your company? What if the fellow's telling you? Is it getting a quality job done, schedule, cost? What's important? Can you see that, Andrew?
Yes, Ken, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is getting a quality job done. That seems to be the priority.
Yeah, that's good. Now, if you look at the other, so this is what we would do. We would just walk through the different heat maps. Then we will also look at the different dyads. And the dyads are very similar to a Likert scale as well. So you can see like, oh, there's a lot of interesting things. You want to maybe look at what's happening from a positive end, from a negative end. We also have this thing called a word cloud. Now, a word cloud just means somebody that's written in the text use this word, so it pops up. So not surprising, the word safety workers, they pop up. Now, on these three vertical dots, you have the ability to click on that. And if you want, you can change that to a list. Then you can actually see these are the short titles that we ask people to put in. Not the whole story, but just a short title, give us an idea what's going on, okay? So you can click on that, and then you can go back to the word cloud. And we got a couple of word clouds. So this is the one up here. This is the short title one, and you can see if I just click on the list, you can see those things. Okay. So as I said, when I'm facilitating, one other thing I want to show you is that if you don't like the bar charts, we can actually go into what's called scatter diagrams. And I'll show you the value of scatter diagrams in a few seconds. I'll leave that as it is. So when facilitating, I refrain from giving my opinion, and I essentially ask Andrew 3 questions. So number one question, Andrew, when you kind of like glance through your dashboard for your company here, do you see anything that confirms what you already know or you feel?
On this particular instance, I'm seeing a lot of negativity.
Yeah, okay, yeah, over here, that's right, okay. And that's typical. The eyes really go to the negative stuff. And you can see where the incidents, near misses, they kind of pop up. If you go over there, you can actually and if you hover over one of those things, I'll say, well, Andrew, you've had 41 incidents, kind of like stories, experiences they've had. But interesting also that you've also had 58 opportunities to improve as well, right? Now, if I were to click over the incident bar, these 41, this is what something the software does for you. It actually creates a filter, and you can see the filter down below. And all those 41 stories, this is how the storytellers signify their stories. Not surprising, there's a whole bunch of negatives associated with that, right? And then you can also see something that, well, look at that, they'll never forget that. So it was one of those stories that resonated with them for some reason. That may be quite useful. And then we would just go through the different patterns. And you can well imagine, and I'll let people, you can, after this session is over, by the way, you have access to this public dashboard. I suggest you go on and play around with it as much as you want and look at the different views and just see different things here. Okay, now I can leave it on there. Right now, I can also look at the narratives patterns, and I can even go way down to the bottom, and I can actually start reading the different stories as well. So lots of information on this stuff. And like I said, I would have probably at the start designed this collector with Andrew and some sort of a design team. So what makes sense for the context of your organization, and develop that as well. Okay. Now, next question, I could leave this filter on and I could say, well, Andrew, question number 2, do you see anything that surprises you?
Not at all.
Okay. Now, this is something which I would say, okay, but interesting. Are you curious? You know, look, you've got a couple of very positives for incidents. over here. So you may decide, yeah, I'm kind of curious about that. Can we look at that? Well, now we just click on that. Oh, look, there's two. For some reason, the storyteller signified it as being very positive. So I can click on that. And if I click on that, I've actually applied two filters. And now you can start reading the stories about that. And there, you can just see. And again, we're looking for patterns to try to make sense of what's happening in your organization here. Is there something there? Oh, something about Sherlock Holmes. Oh, what does that mean? I don't know. But is there something there? Because the third question that I would ask is there anything that makes you curious at number 3?
Always. Got to ask a lot of questions to get some answers.
Yeah, right. So I'm going to click off this one. You may say, okay, this time for all the incidents, we picked just very positive, but I would like to see like, oh, there's 2 very positive, oh, there's 1 there, and there's 1 there. So if you say, well, can I actually see those 3 bars at the right positive altogether? And the answer is, yeah, we can do that. And this is where you go and switch to the scatter diagram. You click on that. And then what I can do, we have this feature called blocking. We activate the blocking feature. And I just do this. And when I do that, it picks those stories. So you can go anywhere along the dyad there and click whatever combination you want. Again, you're exploring, you're analyzing, you're just really trying to get a sense of positive feelings. And then you can create more if you want, more filters. You may want to say, oh, this diagram is really interesting. And if you think that's really interesting, you can do this. You can just share that. And when you click on the share button, it allows you to do a screen capture, Andrew. So that you may want to lift this one out and put that in some sort of a report, a PowerPoint presentation, again, some way of other things. So we give you that. We also give you the ability to print it out, paper, or else you can even embed the code. One thing that we always say about using this information is you need to communicate back with the storytellers. You got to give them feedback because I don't know about you people, but I've been involved over, stretch of my lifetime of doing lots of surveys, whether they're employee satisfaction surveys, customer satisfaction surveys. And I know that you faithfully enter the data and then you wait for their information to come back because you're curious. And sometimes you don't get it back for 3 months, 6 months, never. Something happens and you don't know if it's gone into this ether of nothing, or if management, and I've been in those management meetings where people have said, oh, this is so bad, we can't share this with the folks. So they just bury it. And I know one company that decided, well, it's our time for our annual employee satisfaction review. And the decision maker says, no, we can't do one because we know how bad the results are going to be. So again, we're talking about culture of a company here. And how do we kind of break that pattern and do something different? Well, one of the things we realize we have to do is continually feeding back and offering, saying, hey, whoever reported that the door was broken over there, thank you very much. We have a chance to fix that door. Hey guys, keep on sending in the stories. They're really, really helpful. I would just think like, boy, down in that plant in Brazil, how would they make use of this to really, really support what they got going? Okay. So I'm going to just stop that screen sharing. Hopefully, folks, that gives you an idea how simple it is to work. And again, like I said, it's at a glance because we're all busy people. We don't have really time to delve into the stories. So let me say something which we share with CEOs and VPs. I said, okay, I'm going to go out and meet the troops. I'm going to talk to each person one by one and collect their stories. Honestly, That ain't going to happen. But one thing, it's really, really time consuming. As humans, how many stories can we actually pack in our head? That's a problem as well. So it will start off as a noble effort. Then understandably, it's just going to peter off. And it's going to go back to like, oh, we've been through this before. Here we go again, sort of idea. No, we really want you to look at patterns. And why? Again, because the human brain is designed to look at patterns, not store and retrieve all these little bit of stories. You can look at the stories by clicking down when you want more context. That's always there. But we say do that as a secondary move after you kind of look at the patterns and understand how things are going with that. Okay, so one point we want to make is that this is it is a digital software sense-making approach using SenseMaker software. It's an interactive process. So as new entries are made, these maps, which we showed you in the dashboard, they're dynamically refreshed without delay. Now, we're not saying that, okay, this system is going to replace all those other safety systems in place. We'll never say that, because some of those systems you have in place, maybe they're because of regulatory reasons. You need to have some sort of reporting systems. Obviously, reporting of accidents and stuff like that, we're not going to get away from that. What this thing does is support that with emotional data, the thick data that comes in. If you're in a corporation and you've got some other safety initiatives that you're going, the ones that I've heard about are, oh, we have a psychological safety sort of initiative going hand. Well, having the ability to monitor stories about psychological safety, that really, really supports your whole program. Or maybe have one on well-being or just employee engagement. If you notice, one of the dyads we had there was talking a bit about things that go wrong, things that go right. We threw that die in there because we wanted to say, is there a way that we can capture those safety 2 new view stories of success? And the answer is, sure you can. You can collect them here. Or if you have a learning team, an operational learning team that's working, can you start collecting stories from them to monitor if they've got progress? And yes, the answer is, yes, you can. And in February, Scott, we had Megan Garrett with us talking about ESG sustainability. These are all great, cool initiatives, but you have to have some way of collecting data. Is our sustainability program working, or is it not working? We got to capture that as well. Okay, Andrew, Scott, you got any words about that, or any other programs you're thinking about?
Sure, I'll just share a real quick one with you. Is years ago, I started with an organization and they said, hey, we've got this safety culture survey that we've been doing. Well, I read their safety culture survey results and I thought, this has got to be the happiest place since Disneyland. Well, then you go out and talk to the people on the floor, you get a differing opinion. So the next time we came time to send out the safety survey, I went around and I handed them out individually. And I told the people, this survey is completely anonymous. Unless you put your name on there, I won't know this from anybody else's. So what I want you to do, when you fill this in, think about what you tell your spouse when you go home, about what you think about your job, your boss, what have you. Because if you don't tell me that there's something wrong, we'll assume everything's fine and nothing will ever change. Well, the next time I got the survey back, the numbers plummeted. Now we had a better sense of what was going on. And we could ask the opinions and say, okay, look, what do you think? If we gave you an unlimited budget, what would you do to make things better here? And people were really honest because they want the fact that I gave them an opportunity to give me an honest opinion. They were willing to open up and start to give me some feedback. That's when things started to really improve. Made a huge difference.
Yeah. One of the things that we do with this this approach of using SenseMaker is we prevent gaming the system. Right? Gaming a survey, because how many times have I done a survey? Because in a Likert scale, you know, if it's from 0 to 10, 10 is the ideal. That's what they want you to hit. so you can play the game. So what's it worth to you for me to hit an 10? I get that with customer satisfaction surveys. You go and get your car serviced. And at the end, what does the rep say to you? Well, you're going to hit the survey form there, and we really like you to score 5, particularly me, because that's how my performance is based. You're kind of put in this awkward position, like, okay, I can game that because really I only got 3 service, but I like you, so I'll give you 5. Or maybe vice versa, who knows, right? So in this way, every entry that you made and you signify it, there's no right or wrong answers. That's you just expressing how you feel about that. All right, okay. So I just want to quickly summarize because I see we're coming up the top of the hour. I'm just going to turn to this wayfinding slide. All that we did today was really orient ourselves with the dashboards. We did step number 1. We also know that since the maps are constantly being refreshed with new narrative data, it's really easy to monitor progress. And narratives can answer that destination question, which is number 4. Are we there yet? Or maybe due to the arrival of information not previously known, why are we going there when going here is better? And the last thing you want is to be a project manager who says, we set this target in here, we're going to get there, come hell or high water, when there's a better destination that has just emerged. So we got to be careful of that here. Now, this one called route destination or route decision, the second step, that involves in navigating through the unknowns. And this is a subject of our part 2 that I'm going to do with Andrew next month, where we talked a bit about how do we make use of the dashboard information here to start moving and making improvements here. I'll give you a bit of a teaser. One of the things that SenseMaker can do is create these sort of maps. So instead of a triangle map or the Likert scaling, we can do what you call XY landscape maps. And then we can use these to inform change interventions here. And if you can read that, it's a pictorial, although that diagram plot comes from the Safety Pulse demo data. And essentially what we're saying is a different sort of change intervention question. In the past, I used to have this thing, okay, we scored 6 out of 10. And then management say, 6, let's move that to 8. Then I'd scratch my head and going like, holy crap, how can I go to 8 when I don't even know what 6 is, right? Because the score like a 6 on a typical sort of bar chart is so fuzzy, we can't break it down. So that's why we break it down into stories which are more granular and we can do something with. Well, each of those dots is a story there, and they produce these sort of maps, landscape maps. Now, what we say is that intervention question, instead of going from a 6 to 8, we can say, well, look, in this one here, we have two axes. These 2 axes happen to be 2 of those dyads that people filled out. One is, of course, about getting a quality job done. And the other one, which you have to turn your head on the y-axis, it's about, do we bend the rules or do we bend the work? And they reply that way as well. Well, what you get is a really interesting representation of your culture. And you can see, look at the clusters here. This is where the red axis here. And quickly, we're not getting a job done. And looks like we're going to have to bend. Oh, God. This is areas where we don't want to be. Decision makers and ask the question then, so what's happening here? That's when you would just click the buttons, Andrew. You go down and you can read the stories. And you say there, look at this. This is where we're having troubles with Rule 42 or Rule 17. That starts letting you know that that's where we need to pay attention. So you're not guessing anymore about your interventions. The people are telling you where you should start looking at on these maps. We can also ask a question, where do you want to go? This is your sense of direction. where are the most desirable stories? Well, the green check mark says that's because we're getting quality work done, and we're also staying within the rules. The rules are working for us here. That's good. You can even click on the dots there and read the stories there saying, look at the guys, gals, they're being successful there and they're sharing their really good stories here. And then if other people read those stories that are kind of in between, they consider, hey, we can do that. It's a lot easier to tell or ask people, can you go from X to green if they know what it's like in the form of a story. And they can go like, well, we can't, or maybe they say there, oh, we can't do that, go to the green check mark because we got this barrier that's in the way because of our culture. Okay, that now tells Andrew, like, let's work on, can we actually eliminate that barrier and make it easy for people to go over there? It's all about energy efficiency for the brain, because we're lazy people. We want that energy to be used as efficiently as possible on that one there. Okay. So that's really what the end of the session's all about. I'm going to kind of stop there because Andrew's got a hard stop for the top of the meeting, so I want to respect that there. Any last words from you, Andrew, before I just wrap it up?
So yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys for this. This is really inspirational, to say the least. I think, getting people's stories and using that to help guide your progression through your programs is really the way to go. I spend a lot of time going onto the factory floor in my facility just to walk around, talk to individuals, just share a story, share a laugh, and get a sense of what they do and how they do it. Because I learn more from them than they're ever going to learn from me, by virtue of just going to see how they do their job. And I'm working with people, to my mind, these people are borderline geniuses, most of them, because the stuff they're doing is just absolutely incredible. So I'm learning from them all the time.
Yeah. And a narrative database, that's your DNA for the organization. It'll never go away. You can always refer back to those stories forever.
Right, John.
So we always like to end with 3 takeaways. So let me share that with you viewers. Number 1 is start with the certainty of the present. Number 2 is engage your workers in what they naturally do best, which is tell stories. And the third one is wayfinding is navigating, which is inherently uncertain, to not only minimize risk, but to also take opportunities as they arise. Okay. So for that, Scott, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank everyone for joining today, and thank Gary as always, and our special guest Andrew today. That was great to have you share your story. And yeah, I would encourage people to play around with those tools until the follow-up, when we can dive in a little bit deeper. And we will have links for it when we post the YouTube video and when we send out the follow-up email as well. So if you didn't get them today, I know there's a few people calling in by phone, but we'll make sure that those links are available so you can try out those tools between now and our next session next month.
And I think what we're also talking about, Scott, is maybe part of Safety Connect, which is coming up.
Yeah.
Or Record Forum is the ability to people to come on, ask questions, and I'll be there and I can answer them for you as well. Right. So again, it's all about how can we take this idea and keep it going forward and having constant conversation about it, see if it works for you or not.
Yeah, and I'll just put the Safety Connect registration information in the chat as well, so you can click on that and learn more about Safety Connect, which is coming up October 8th, 9th, and 10th.
Yeah, and so for our next show, and Andrew is coming back there, and we'll do part 2, and we'll show you what sort of interventions that you can do to move from red X to green check mark.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Thanks, Andrew. Take care.
Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.